This is Rahul Akerkar, who is currently working as a chef and the founder of Qualia Hospitality. So, Rahul, you have done your master's in engineering at Columbia University, New York, and then you began your first restaurant in India. Can you tell us more about Just Desserts?
Okay, so firstly, let me just back up a little bit. I started working in restaurants in first in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, when I was doing my first bachelor's at Franklin Marshall College in biology and philosophy, and I decided, I did summer school one summer, and I kept going to this restaurant bar. And by the end of the summer, I was broke, and I told the owner, if you want me to keep coming here to spend my money, you're going to have to give me a job so I can earn some. So I started working at this little restaurant. And then when I went on to, I started as a dishwasher actually, and then after that they got rid of their chef because he was caught stealing food. They trained me up. It was a very small restaurant. Then when I went on to New York and to do a second bachelor's, my master's, and also 2 years towards my PhD in biochemical engineering, I continued to work restaurants at night. So I was always sort of associated with the restaurant industry. It helped pay for school. And what happened eventually was that in doing my PhD, I had a falling out with my advisor over something that happened in my research, and I quit overnight, literally. So I quit overnight, and then I did a bunch of stuff for a while, but the only constant was working in restaurants in New York, and so I decided at some point that I was going to stick with that, and that I really didn't want to do bioengineering anymore because at the time, this is in the late 80s, the field was very nascent, and all the jobs were in pure research. And since I'd had a falling out with my advisor over the research side of it, I really lost interest. And so as I said, I was working in restaurants, and then I came back to India afterwards. And at first, I didn't immediately start Just Desserts. At first, I was doing like catering from the home, and then I teamed up with AD Singh, and we opened Just Desserts together. But that was a very short while. That was for 2, 3 months. Then I went my own way and set up a restaurant called Under the Over at Kemp's Corner. And from Under the Over, it just sort of kept going. My wife and myself, we moved to Bangalore after that, when Under the Over got over, and we set up and ran Protima Bedi's Kutiram retreat outside outside Bangalore in a little village called Hesaragatta, where she had her dance village called Nityagram. So we were there for a couple of years, then came back to Bombay and eventually set up Indigo.
Great. So that's really interesting. And so Indigo has changed the way Mumbai eats. So what shaped Indigo?
What shaped Indigo? Well, I think I shaped Indigo. We basically set up the place. It was the first really food-focused um, restaurant in the country, in a way. It was hospitality driven. We sweat all the details, all the fine points. We were actually cooking. It was a restaurant that was on par with anywhere in the world at the time. And we basically took fine dining. Well, it wasn't fine dining, but people really considered it fine dining because of the attention to detail, the attention to using the best ingredients possible, to the way we ran the operation, to the way we interacted with our guests. all of those things. And we basically took we took elevated dining, if you will, or serious dining out of the five-star hotels, and we were the first restaurant, standalone restaurant, to like achieve these to like achieve these milestones, if you will, and we were recognized um, the world over in several awards and magazines and such across the world, and of course in India too, for setting the benchmark, if you will, of modern dining in India. So I think that's really what caused I guess the shift in the way not only Mumbai ate, but also India too. We basically shook up. I think most five-star hotels and restaurants of the time had got very complacent with what they were doing. There was no growth, there was no evolution in their menus. It was very old-fashioned, and we came along and changed all that. We started serving ingredients that were not common, like duck and oysters and various things like this. We, did Western food with Indian influences. As I said, we were very focused on hospitality and service. We had a 320 odd label wine list, which was unheard of in this country. We were recognized by Wine Spectator, and we won the Wine Spectator Award for 10 years straight for a wine and food program for restaurants. So I mean, there were a number of firsts that Indigo achieved, and I think that's what. And it's not what shaped Indigo, but how Indigo shaped the restaurant scene in the country.
You have worked in the food industry for the past 30 years, and so what trends have you seen in the past decades?
Well, I think that's a very interesting question. Um, Initially, I'll go back to 92 when we set up Under the Over. And, we were the first true to taste Western restaurant, if you will, in the city. And, people back then didn't have the vocabulary to tell you why they didn't like something or even why they liked something. It was just a simple yes or no. This is great, but I can't tell you why, or I don't like this and I can't tell you why. Right now, so now with exposure, with people traveling, with palates being exposed, and such, people have become very astute, and I think also a lot of the TV shows have a lot to do with it. Shows like Master Chef and such, which has really brought cooking and food to the forefront of everybody's life experience. And so I think people have become very discerning now about taste, about what they're eating, how they're eating. They can tell you whether something is made well, not made well. Back in the day, I used to have people complaining and telling me, well, your home fries are not authentic. I've had home fries in Texas and these are not the same. And my answer to that was, yes, they're not going to be the same because home fries are exactly that. They're fries of the home. This is my home. My potatoes are Indian. My cooks are Indian. Everything here is Indian. They're going to be different. So these kinds of things have changed along the way. I think people have also, I think the way we eat has changed. The way plates were put together 20 years ago, 30 years ago was traditional from a point of view that you had a protein, a starch, and a vegetable. Now it's, people have shifted to an ingredient sort of starring or ingredient showing plates. They're small plates where you have basically one or two ingredients and not too much more than that. People like to share more. I think the whole dining scene is more convivial and easygoing. It's less formal. So there's a lot of change that has happened over the years. I also think that there was a period of growth a few years ago where we unfortunately bred a lot of mediocrity, and everything was price driven. In the West, in the US and in England and such, the whole food scene changed over 2 decades, where it went from nouvelle cuisine to, there was this big explosion in the 70s and 80s in let's say in New York and in London, where we had, chefs were coming up with what they call now modern American or modern European cuisine. And it went, trial and error process with the customer and the chefs and restaurants over a 2 decade period. In India, we basically piggybacked on that, and we didn't have our own organic evolution. We would take concepts from the West that were working there, pick them up and bring them and drop them in India. And things don't always translate that way, right? Take, for example, an English pub. It's part of the culture and lifestyle in England. You can't pick up a pub concept and bring it here to India and expect it to work. It's not in our culture. It's not in our heritage to basically go to a pub with your mates and have a few pints. That's not how we entertain ourselves. So through the 80s and 90s and going into the 2000s even here, I would say not the 80s, but let's say the 90s and the 2000s and coming up to now, we are slowly coming into our own now. There's a huge crop of homegrown chefs, thinking chefs. A lot of people have now turned, are more comfortable doing local cuisine, and taking that to the world. So that is a really encouraging thing, because we have a huge and diverse and very rich culinary heritage in this country. It's different north, south, east, west, and I think the fact that local chefs are now expounding on that and exploring that, developing it, I think it's fantastic. And I think the more that happens, we're taking Indian food. I don't know what that means, but basically Indian food's going global, and it's being, finally being exposed as it needs to be.
That's really insightful. And so, tell us more about your latest venture, Qualia.
So, I sold out of Degustopus, which was the company that owned Indigo that I set up in '99. When actually I set up a little earlier, but we opened Indigo in '99. And I sold out in early 2015, end of 2014, early 2015. I took a couple of years off. I had a non-compete, and so I took a couple of years off. And then Qualia was the restaurant we set up and opened in April of last year, 2019. And it's sort of my comeback, if you will, my 2.0. And it's all about exploring the kind of food profile that I love, which is the sweet sour profile, the sort of Marathi you say ambad gourd, khatta meeta kind of chaat or margarita profile, which is, it just makes the food really bright and tastes very fresh in the mouth because of the acidity and such. And so we've been experimenting with pickling, we've been experimenting with fermentation, which basically underscores all these flavor profiles and techniques. And so Qualia is my new restaurant. We have an open kitchen with a wood burning hearth right in the middle of the kitchen, middle of the dining room. So So, and we have a wood burning pizza oven, and we have a bakery on premises. So everything that we do is fresh. And again, it's real attention to detail, but it's fun dining. It's not fine dining. And it's we've already been recognized for for what we are. We won Restaurant of the Year last year, Condé Nast. We won, we won a bunch of different accolades over last year.
I like how you shifted from fine dining to your own fun dining. And so, thank you, Rahul. Thank you so much for your time and good luck on your work.
Thanks very much. Bye, Jan.
Bye.